I want stem cells in all my joints, like most other women probably want Botox. So now, like 20 years later, here we are, and I'm getting my stem cell Botox.
Welcome to the CPI podcast. I got one of my favorite people here, Felicia Oh. And Felicia, how many times have you been down here to CPI now?
I think this is my fifth time.
Fifth time. So now probably everyone's going to think that stem cells don't work because you've been here 5 times. So
why do you keep going back? Because they're fun.
Yeah, you get to see the evolution too.
And it's been amazing.
Yeah. So, well, Felicia, we've known each other forever through jiu-jitsu, and you're one of the pioneers in the sport. Absolutely. Won so many things, I probably can't name them all. What are the big ones for us?
I think like Pan Gi and Nogi gold when they first started that, and second at silver medal at ADCC.
And you won the first
trials. The
trials, no, but the big the rings when they did USA Grappling, right?
Oh yeah. I FILA USA Grappling 2007. Yeah, I won that year, and then I was on the world team for 3 years, and then the last time I did it was 2009, and I won both gi and no gi on my birthday.
Hey, all right. I want to ask you how old you are.
No, you can't. That's part of this.
That's part of it? Okay, well, yeah, so I mean, tell us, let's see, we met through jiu-jitsu, and tell us a little bit about your journey, going through jiu-jitsu and why you got into it. And
I started relatively late. I was 33 when I started, kind of by accident. Never had any interest in combat or anything like that. And a friend of mine told me about it. I went, looked okay, signed up, and, it was a monthly fee. So I figured I should probably commit to going at least twice a week since I was paying for it. And so I just started going. And after 6 months, I did my first tournament and just kept competing after that. Along the way, I got to train under some amazing people and with amazing people. So my master is Jean Jacques Machado. And so coming up, I was in the room with Eddie Bravo before he was Eddie Bravo. Joe Rogan was in there, just a bunch of people that now looking back in history kind of take on a different meaning, right? Yeah. So I was actually just thinking about that the other day, when Eddie did ADCC in 2003 and tapped Whaler. And at that point, there were no no-gi schools. Mm-hmm. And there was always that argument, as we have drama in the jiu-jitsu community. And at that time, it was gi versus no-gi.
Yep.
And it was a big thing. And, Eddie was the first one to start his 10th planet no-gi system. And so he created this whole thing of no-gi, of 10th planet. And I just realized the other day, he really just started that whole no-gi quote-unquote movement, right, to really spread no-gi as a separate thing. It was, otherwise we would just take our gi top off and roll around without the gi. And now we've got a world where both sports are so big and growing.
I would almost say that no-gi is kind of bigger now than gi. Yeah. And you're absolutely right about Eddie. One thing I always tell people, I don't feel like people give him enough credit. Because he really created his whole system. How many other people have created a whole entire end-to-end system? And then, maybe they did, but who knows about it, let alone have thousands and thousands of people training it. I don't even know how many. Every time I go somewhere new, I'm like, oh, there's a 10th planet in Cancun. Oh, there's one here, they're all over the place right now, which is, super cool. I mean, I met Eddie back blue belts at the U.S. Open in Santa Cruz, California. I think it was 97, maybe 98, somewhere around there. Got the first twister on film, posted it on onthemat.com.
Yeah, because you shot everything. You were everywhere shooting everything and making tapes.
Yeah, Gumby and I were
videotapes out of the back of your car.
I remember everybody was talking. I was at house, and everyone was like, "Oh, Eddie Bravo, this guy, he was tapping people out with weird stuff people didn't know." And I remember Hegan telling Half about him, because they're good friends. But I mean, Eddie's been a great friend for a long time, and he's a true pioneer in the industry, and I feel like a lot of times he doesn't get enough credit for what he's done and what he's created. I mean, you just mentioned two guys that have pushed the sport so far, like Joe Rogan just being on the UFC, always being so knowledgeable, talking about jiu-jitsu and stuff, and not being somebody who's, well, he's got him by his neck, you know what I mean? Like knowing actually what was going on, really informing the public about jiu-jitsu and what was going on. So it's cool, I used to go back and train at Jean Jacques too. He's another guy, man. He's incredible.
I remember training, and Eddie and Joe were there, and I think Joe was a blue belt, and Joe would always come in and talk about whatever was new. And I do remember him talking about stem cells, right, way back then, because like that's just Joe. And obviously now it's like he's spread throughout the whole culture, like all over the world in a whole different way, like beyond I think anyone's imagination. But he was just kind of like a jiu-jitsu guy that was also an actor, a comedian guy at the time. And he would always, kind of be up on all the science and health stuff. And I remember very clearly like saying like, I want stem cells in all my joints. Like most other women probably want Botox. So now, like 20 years later, here we are, and I'm getting my stem cell Botox. Yeah. Like it blows my mind, and it's like, oh shit, like here we are, and like I know people that went down that road, and I get to be part of that.
Yeah, Joe's another guy. Like I don't think people really give him credit for how smart he is. Like I spent a lot of time hanging out with him. He's a super smart guy, and what I really like about him is that he's so open. And when he speaks about something, he's not like a know-it-all. You know what I mean? He'll define and he'll tell you his terms of like knowledge and what he knows and what he thinks he knows. And I miss the old UFC days when like all of us would just be hanging out. Like Tate Fletcher would be there and the guys, and we'd be eating before we go to the weigh-ins, or eating before we go to the fights or after the fights and stuff. And just Joe was already super famous, but it's not like it is.
It was like easier, like there was like a lot more seats that you could sit in.
I used to get like 10 free front row seats to every UFC. Now they're like, where are you? Like, yeah, no.
Now you have to wait in line to use the restroom.
I can't just run backstage whenever I want to and check on somebody. And it was interesting. We were talking about BJJSP earlier. And like that was like back in the days. I'd be in BJ's dressing room and then I'd be in GSP's dressing room. I'd just be wandering around backstage with my video camera, like making content before being a content creator was a term or anything. So,
yeah, you were the guy with the camera.
It was a good time. If you had a big fancy camera, I found if you just walk past security, it looked like you were knowing where you're going. You could walk into just about anywhere.
I find now if I wear a suit, I can just walk in.
You just walk in, you just eyes forward, keep walking, go right by. I mean, I'm a habitual line cutter everywhere I go, so I practice that eyes forward, look like you got purpose, and you're in a rush, and people kind of just let you go. Yeah. It works out really good. So you started originally with Jean Jacques?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I left for a brief few years when I went up to teach up in Valencia. And that was amazing. I just got exposed to so many other things outside of jiu-jitsu. And in fact, like that's how I've gotten to end up being a judge, because I was like an inspector for CSAC and all these things. It's amazing how our lives, we keep going around in these kind of circles where you kind of go and get new skills, like whether it's stem cells or whatever, or you get exposed to different things, and then it kind of reconnects to everything in that body of your mind, and what you do like keeps growing. Like it's amazing what you've done with CPI. Yeah. Well, first with
not
Chipsa.
Just me, not just me. It's
first with
Ed, Dedrick, and I.
Yeah. But like I remember hearing about Chipsa a long time ago when you guys first started it, and I mean I didn't really have any cancer needs at the time.
Thank God.
So that
let's keep it that way.
But I've always heard. I had always heard about it, and then. When you started this thing, and I remember you posted, I was like, I'm there.
Yeah. Yeah. You've been a supporter and a user for a long time. Yeah. Not for cancer, though. But, I mean, you've had some pretty decent amount of stuff treated. You're back to do your shoulder. You hurt it again or what?
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this podcast, people, stem cells only last for as long as you take care of your body. If you get your knees done and you start running marathons, you're going to wear your knees out again. It's not the stem cells' fault. It's how you take care of your body.
But we can keep getting more of them.
You can keep coming back.
Well, I mean, it's so crazy because we do live longer and people are much more active now. And stem cells are great because they do help enable us to continue doing things. And I remember I hear from Jean Jacques, guys back in his day, they had knee surgery. And knee injuries were like a career-ending thing back then.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when I started jiu-jitsu, like I've had a couple knee surgeries and I got to continue and keep going. But now it's like the next step in that evolution, right, with stem cells. And we get to keep going and rolling for
Roll Forever. Plug there, rollforever.com.
Yeah. But, we always say, oh, it's a lifestyle, like it is.
Yeah.
And you don't get to just stop, even though I've tried and thought I had to for different reasons. And you end up coming back, It's like, what brings you joy in your life?
Right.
Like, for me, it was rolling.
Yeah.
So every time I get back on there, I'm just super grateful, and you never know when that last roll is.
That's true.
Right? Like, figuratively and like literally,
Yeah.
right? Because of injuries or whatnot. So, I don't take it for granted anymore.
Yeah, I lost that, like when I had back surgery, I thought I was going to be able to come back and train hard and stuff, but it never came back. I just kept getting hurt, and I had to make the decision that I liked walking better than,
or you like
than training,
jumping off of mountains,
stuff. Well, so
I mean,
I feel like in jiu-jitsu though, it's always the random injury that takes me out. It's the guy who like rolls over on top of you from another roll or something, like, or you're like going light with somebody and some random pop, like happens. I feel like at least like when I'm kiteboarding or, parasailing, paragliding, or riding my dirt bike, I'm doing it to myself. It's like, it's my own stupidity that, got me, into that. So.
But those are amazing things to be doing, like not everyone's going to do jiu-jitsu forever.
Yeah.
You can find other things to fill those spaces.
I mean, well, I found like when I was at ADCC this weekend, Mo did another amazing event up there, and Ed and I went to go check everybody out up there. And, like when I watched tournaments, I'm like, oh man, I really want to jump back in and like, do it. But then I see all these broken jiu-jitsu guys come down, and they're just like, I can't turn my neck or something like that. And I'm like, well, now that I'm out of the competition, testosterone and everything, I'm like, maybe, I'll just stick to like.
Although there are worse schools now, like maybe you can find a school where that's more appropriate, the right tribe for where you are in your journey of life and jiu-jitsu.
I mean, that's definitely possible.
I mean, it's not like
in
the old days where there was like one place and kill or be killed.
Yeah. I
mean, you definitely came from.
I came from the injury factory of all injury factories. Team Half Gracie for life. Yeah, we definitely, every match was like $1 million was on the line and the gold medal. And it was a different era.
A different era, and, definitely that academy was the most,
aggressive. Yeah, we definitely. Half knew that he just, needed to just make us technical enough, but really mean that we could win a lot. Definitely.
I did compete against a couple girls from there, and I thought they were mean, and then they were like the sweetest people.
Yeah. Well, on the mat, off the mat, two different. But it was definitely a don't let go of the submission till the ref pulls you off type of vibe.
Don't wash the
don't wash your gi, don't cut your fingernails, type of, back then for us, it was like, we wanted to learn and practice all the dirty moves, the filthy moves, like now I feel like it's so much, and it's better because you don't get hurt as much, but, back then we would have all kinds of like dirty moves that we were practicing, like a knee reap was just like a normal type of thing, it wasn't like something like, oh, hey, we, don't reap my knee. It was like you expected to have your knee reaped, so it's shame. That's what I liked about Jean Jacques. So Jean Jacques always had a little more mellow type of vibe to it.
Yeah, like I didn't even know what dirty things were to do. You know, like the most I had was like a knuckle in the ribs. You know, that's as dirty as I could get.
Elbow in the ribs, hip on eye socket. You know, we had all see.
I don't know.
You know, chin whips, neck cranks. All that was like everyday fair game at Half Gracie.
Well,
We did that to our friends.
I'm quite glad I didn't go there. I don't know if I would have lasted.
Yeah, if you came from a new school in the house, first of all, the warm-up was so hard we wanted to try to make the guy throw up. And if the guy didn't throw up, then everyone was pissed because warm-ups were like an hour and 15 minutes. And then you got fed to the lions. Everybody's like, you're the one that made warm-up so hard, I'm going to kill you. I'll be like, new guy here, sorry, no technique today, time to train, you know. And then he would always grab like the small, like we always had our white belt enforcer, like BJ was our white belt enforcer for a long time. And so he'd always grab the littlest white belt that he thought could like smash somebody, you know.
Yeah.
And then fed him like, oh, you're a purple belt, meet BJ Penn. It was different. I loved it back then. Yeah.
It was there are parts of it that I miss.
Yeah.
Granted, like it wasn't quite to that level, but there are definitely parts of that culture and that time that I miss now.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, it wasn't good that if there was like a incident on the mat at a tournament, you could plan on the two people fighting in the parking lot afterwards. But it was also kind of cool that they were fighting in the parking lot afterwards.
And then, it's not a jiu-jitsu tournament until a fight breaks out.
You know, well, that doesn't happen so much anymore.
No,
It's
no.
changed,
And
you
at the random time it doesn't, it's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it used to be.
Everybody's, you know, they're all like PC and butthurt about it.
Yeah.
But it was like multiple fights a day sometimes at the old school Irvine tournaments with Joe Moreira and stuff. It was definitely different.
But the other day, you know, especially because the last couple of years have been pretty thin with the lockdown and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think like, the ADCC Open the other day was more like you got the vibe back. Definitely. Yep. You know, it wasn't, I guess, you know, like IBJJF is a little more sanitized and everything separated, but like here we are on the side of the mats and it felt like the old days, but it was a big tournament, but it was still like you were close and, you know, just in that environment, it was like, that was a fun vibe again.
It wasn't like you're like in, you know, in this pen that you couldn't go and things went off the mat, you know, and they let it go and heel hooks are legal and, you know, it definitely had that old school vibe and you know, no tournament's perfect. Everyone could do better, but I think, you know, what Mo and what Seth, those guys are doing is awesome, you know, like they've really taken the sport. I mean, that last Las Vegas Worlds was incredible. Like, I mean, Jiu-Jitsu never seen anything like that before. And it was funny to people like, you know, you get your complainers anywhere, but some people would like, you know, say some stuff, be like, are you crazy, man? Like, what are you talking about? You should have seen ADCC China, you know what I mean? Like some of these other events, you know? It's like, come on.
I mean, like, you see the old footage. Even when I came in, I would see the old footage, you know, a couple years before at ADCC, right? And I'm like, are they letting off fireworks inside a tent? And then the drums would be playing and stuff. And then, and then it started moving around, and that was all cool. And then, there were a few years where it kind of moved around, and I don't know if it was my involvement or lack of involvement or maybe it's a little combination, you know, but then, 2019 was like.
Even the year before, was that 2017, whenever it was, I don't know the dates, but I think what those two have really done is made it so much more spectator friendly, which really grows the sport. You know, it seemed like before it wasn't like they didn't even care about spectators or like making it spectator friendly, but you know, that evolution, you know, like both those guys in their events have really done and getting guys paid. You know, it's like, I know guys that used to fight on the casino for $500, you know what I mean? And get beat down. So that's why I was like,
that was good.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I'm not trying to do some of these MMA events. $500, I got a nice tech job, you know? Like, no, thank you. Not trying to end up in the hospital for $500. Too big a wimp.
Well, you know what just happened, though, that I think is about to get passed is the state of California is setting up a pension fund for.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So hopefully, you know, like, I don't know what level it'll be at, but it's like recognizing and giving something back.
Yeah, something's better than nothing. It's a start. Absolutely. California finally does something right. Yeah. That's strange. Well, so you work a lot now with the with that
coming back.
Yeah.
The world's opening back up.
Oh, good. Yeah.
A few new promotions
and you said you're actually judging
I'm
fights?
A judge now.
You're a judge.
Yeah.
How's that process work where you like work your way up? How does it?
Well, you start with taking a class. You know, I recommend everyone, like, you know, in the past I've coached and trained people and stuff, and the fighters, like, go take a class. You know, go take Herb's class, especially if you're in California. It's Pasadena, you know, like, or send someone from your gym to go take the class and understand the judging criteria, because then you know what to tell your fighter in that third round to go, how to go win that round. You know. So I worked at Big John's, and then I eventually had become an inspector for the state of California. And so basically you're like a fight cop. Like, you're the guys in the suit that get to walk the fighters out, and you kind of babysit them and make sure that they're not cheating, that everyone's following the rules. And it's pretty fun, you know, like, you get to, like, for me, I got to see a lot of guys that I came up with at tournaments and stuff that were now quartering, like, that were coaching fighters. And so it'd be like going to a tournament every weekend. It's like seeing your old friends and just, hey, how's it going, and seeing what they're up to. And, you know, Big John used to teach people how to be refs up there. And so actually a lot of those guys are the current referees now.
Right.
And people had always bugged me to ref and judge. And I never really wanted to. I did I judged one event, as you might remember, in 2002, called Ultimate Athlete 2 at Morongo.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Eddie Bravo, Turi Altavilla, and I were the judges. And a riot broke out.
Yep.
A biker riot broke out, and the sheriffs came in and cleared the room, cleared the event and the parking lot, and we were in the back trailers with the fighters waiting it out. I think there were some stabbings and shootings. I don't know. Were you at that?
I was not at it, but Gumby was at it, so I heard all about it.
Dude, it was like waves of people, and man, it was kind of scary.
I heard it got super crazy. So
20 years and 1 month to the month later, I was sitting in Herb's course.
That's awesome.
And so it was kind of time.
I mean, that was a pretty good judging panel, though. You, Turi, Eddie. I mean, that's some fair judging.
But there was no judging criteria.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like you watched and just decided.
Pick a winner.
Yeah. Now we have judging criteria. As I say, like, if you are responsible for someone fighting or you want to know and understand, I think there's like maybe an online one that someone else does or whatever, but just start to educate yourself on it, because, like, I hear people talking and it's like they're talking about Pride 2003 rules.
Right.
You know, and it's like, no, that's not how fights are scored. So, and then I took the class, passed it, and then I started judging for CAMO, which is the amateur organization in the state of California.
Right.
And so I did that, and then in January I switched over from being an inspector to a judge, which you can only do one or the other. They're two different job classifications.
Right.
And so I've been doing that.
Cool.
And, it's pretty awesome.
No, I think it's great that you're doing it. You're so knowledgeable about their sport. Everybody respects you. A lot of people know you.
And then they're going to hate me when I, go the other way.
Maybe.
Their fighter.
I mean, it's a good point, like there's been a couple of times you explained to me like the rules and it's surprising. Like I thought I knew the rules. I didn't know the rules change all the time, and fighters lose fights because they don't understand the rules, and that's on them. Of course you should learn the rules. And I like the change of like damage being one of the most important criteria now, whereas you can't just take a guy down a bunch of times and hold him. And that earns you points or that earns you a win. Like, just because you take a guy down, if you don't do anything, who cares, right? It doesn't really, I think it's better. I think in the truer sense of the fight and stuff, it's better.
And I know from like coaching grapplers, like we have to start on our feet, right? And how long does it take you to finally get your takedown, right? And how much damage do you take standing till you get that? And let's say you take him to the ground and you're sitting there and then the round ends, and you go to your corner, and a minute later, where do you start again?
Yeah.
You got to start over. So if you've done some damage to reduce that person's abilities, then you have a much easier chance of getting them to the ground to where you want to be in the ground, right? So I think like when you start thinking it through, you know, like I know, but the point system of jiu-jitsu is based on ground fights, right? But part of jiu-jitsu, part of the great thing about jiu-jitsu is that we can train at 80, 90, 100% every day because we don't actually take damage, right? Like we tap. Granted, you know, we've all been damaged and here we are at CPI. But but we're not taking damage in the same way as like boxers, kickboxers are taking.
Sure.
And so then if you translate that into the judging criteria in a fight, it's like, yeah, use your grappling to go down, create damage so that if you get re-stood up or it ends up back on your feet, then you've got a little more advantage going into that than starting from square one again.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're judging now. Hopefully you'll be up judging in the UFC now because then I'll know a judge. I probably know some I don't know people that are judging these days.
Frank Trigg,
Yeah,
well, he referees.
Yep.
Coming up, Chris Lieben.
Cool. Yeah,
like the cool thing, Andy Foster's the head of the Athletic Commission in the state of California, and his whole idea is to bring in the people that have been competitors and participants in the sports to regulate the sports and to officiate the sports, which makes perfect sense.
Sure.
And I think the sports are getting to a point where that is possible now, right? So you have Trigg, who used to fight.
Yep.
You know, he used to wrestle and he used to fight MMA, and you know, I think he's in the Hall of Fame, you know, for his fight. So we understand the submissions, the positions, but also the gravity of what we're judging. You know, it's like we don't take it lightly. We've all been in the situation. It's like, you know, you lose by this much.
Yeah. Anybody's done jiu-jitsu where we're used to the bad calls, losing to the bad, robbed by the ref, you know, the victim mentality of, maybe you just weren't good enough to beat him. Can't say that. You can't say that. Well, hey, it was great to have you back at CPI. Let's get your recently re-injured shoulder fixed up for you again.
Get back on the mat. So you can get back on the mat.
Then you get back on the mat. Make sure you take your 3 months. Get better. Do your physical therapy. Yeah, I know.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I think just like the people that come down understand it now. You know, I think when I first came, like people didn't quite get it. And, you know, people understand like this is an investment in your health, in your future, and in, you know, you could be a grandmother or a mother, whatever, and like, you know, taking care of your grandkids. It's like at every level, you know, it's not just athletes, it's just like regular people.
It's all regular people
that can't like walk around or whatever, they have whatever injury. And, you know, we have this way kinder, gentler way to address it instead of the invasive surgery, which, you know, like for me, even in that recovery time of the 3 months or whatever, like you can still function in your life, you know, like you haven't been cut into and stitched back up and have to recover from that.
Yep.
And that makes all the difference, you know.
Absolutely. I always tell everybody, like, what do you got to lose? Try this before you do surgery, because surgery, you're creating an injury to try to heal an injury, and it's going to suck no matter what.
I think I've avoided several operations. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Hey.